Dad, just go back to bed. You're confused. Those were the first words I heard that morning. I was standing on my front porch in my robe at 6:15 a.m., watching two men in blue uniforms carry my couch down the steps. The brown leather couch Virginia and I had bought in 1987, the year we'd finally saved enough to replace the hand-me-down from her parents. They were loading it into a U-Haul truck in my driveway. My daughter Michelle stood near the truck with a clipboard, checking items off with sharp, efficient movements. My son Daniel was directing the movers. They moved like they'd rehearsed this. "Get that too," Daniel said, pointing to the porch swing. "Everything goes." "What's going on?" I asked. Michelle didn't look up from her clipboard. "We're moving you to Maple Ridge, the senior apartment. We told you about this last month, remember?" I felt my chest tighten. "I didn't agree to—" "Dad, don't start." She finally looked at me, her expression tight with impatience. "We've been planning this for weeks. The apartment's ready. The lease is signed. You can't stay here anymore. This is my house." Daniel walked over, his voice low and condescending. "Dad, you're 72. You live alone. You forget things. Last week you called me asking where Mom was. She's been gone for 2 years. The lie was so casual, so practiced. I never said that. You don't remember. That's the problem." He rolled his eyes. "This is for your own good. The apartment is smaller, easier to manage." "I don't want to move." "You don't get to decide that anymore," Michelle said. She waved at one of the movers. "Careful with that box." I watched the mover carry a box labeled "Kitchen, Fragile" in Michelle's handwriting. The box was sealed with packing tape. She'd packed my things without asking, without telling me. "We've already paid the deposit," Daniel said. "First and last month's rent, $4,400. It's done." The number hit me like a physical blow. $4,400, my money, my account. "You had no right?" "We have every right," Michelle interrupted. Her voice was sharp now, cutting. "You're not capable of living alone. You're going to hurt yourself or burn the house down. I've never missed a mortgage payment in 43 years. "That you remember," Daniel said. I'd paid this house off before Daniel learned to shave. The condescension in his voice was like a slap. I looked at my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike on this very street, the man I'd helped through college, and I didn't recognize him. "Stop," I said. "Stop loading my furniture. Stop treating me like I'm incompetent." Michelle sighed, the kind of sigh you give a toddler throwing a tantrum. "This is exactly why we didn't tell you. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. This is my house. You have no legal right to move me. Show me the power of attorney," I said. "Right now. If you don't have it, you don't touch a thing." Daniel's expression hardened, his jaw set. "We'll see about that." He walked back to the truck, pulling out his phone. Michelle followed, her voice low and urgent. One of the movers walked past carrying a box of books. I recognized the titles through the packing tape. Virginia's gardening books. Michelle turned to Daniel. "Call the apartment complex. Tell them we'll be there by noon." They weren't asking. They'd already moved my life into that truck. I walked back into my house and locked the door. Behind me, I heard Michelle's voice rise. "Dad! Dad! Open the door!" I didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen and sat down at the table where Virginia and I had eaten breakfast for 35 years. Through the window I could see them. Daniel was pacing in tight circles. Michelle was on her phone, gesturing sharply with her free hand. This was my home, and my children were trying to take it from me. I called 911 from the landline. My cell phone was upstairs, and I didn't trust my hands to be steady enough to climb stairs right now. 911, what's your emergency? There are people loading my furniture into a truck without my permission. Are you in danger, sir? I hesitated. Was I in danger? They were my children. I don't know. Maybe. They're my children. I kept my hand on the deadbolt the whole time. A pause on the line. The dispatcher's voice changed, became more careful. Your children are loading your furniture? Yes, without my permission. I want them to stop. I'm sending an officer to your location. What's your address? 428 Elm Street. Stay inside, Mr. Carter. Gerald Carter. Stay inside, Mr. Carter. An officer will be there soon. I hung up and watched through the window. The movers had stopped working. Michelle was talking to them, gesturing toward the truck. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. Officer Ramirez stepped out. Young, maybe. 30. He talked to Daniel and Michelle first. I watched through the window as Michelle slid papers across to him, pointed, underlined with her finger. Daniel nodded, his face serious. Then Ramirez knocked on my door. I unlocked it and opened it halfway. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I'm Officer Ramirez. I need to ask you a few questions." "They're stealing my furniture," I said. Your son says you agreed to move to an assisted living facility. He says you've been having memory issues. He looked past me, like he was deciding whether I was a victim or a problem. I don't have memory issues, and this is my house. I have the deed upstairs. Ramirez's expression didn't change, but I saw something shift in his eyes. Can I see it? I led him upstairs to my office. The room was neat, organized. 40 years as an accountant had taught me that much. The filing cabinet was old, olive green. I pulled open the second drawer and found the folder labeled Property. For 1 second, I realized the whole morning could hinge on one folder. The deed was inside, exactly where it had been for 43 years. My name, Gerald Carter. The date, November 12th, 1981. Ramirez examined it carefully. He radioed in the deed number. This is your house. Yes. And you didn't give anyone permission to move your belongings? No. I woke up and they were loading a truck. He handed the deed back. Let me talk to them. We went back downstairs. Ramirez walked out to the driveway where Daniel and Michelle were waiting. I stood in the doorway and listened. Mr. Carter has documentation showing he owns this property, Ramirez said. His voice was calm but firm. He stated he didn't give permission for this move. Do you have power of attorney? Silence. Michelle opened her mouth, closed it. Daniel looked at his shoes. Do you have any legal documentation giving you authority to make decisions on his behalf? No, Daniel said finally. But he's not capable. Then you're trespassing, Ramirez said. You need to return everything to the house and leave, now. Daniel's face went red. This is ridiculous. We're his children. We're trying to protect him from himself. If you don't return his property, I'll charge you with theft. Do you understand? It took 2 hours to unload the truck. I watched from the porch as the movers carried everything back inside. The couch went back to its spot in the living room, though it was facing the wrong direction. The boxes were stacked in the hallway, labeled in Michelle's neat handwriting. Michelle didn't look at me once. Daniel kept his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low, angry tones. By 10 a.m., the truck was empty. The movers drove away. Officer Ramirez handed me his business card. Mr. Carter, I'd recommend getting an attorney. Document everything that happened today. If they try this again, you'll need evidence. Thank you, I said. He nodded. Take care of yourself. After everyone left, I sat alone in my kitchen. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall, the same clock Virginia had hung in 1985, the one that ran 3 minutes fast. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. My children had tried to move me out of my home, without asking, without permission, while I slept. That's when I understood something. They'd been planning this for months. The apartment, the deposit, the truck, all of it coordinated, organized, executed. But they'd made one critical mistake. They thought I was helpless. I didn't argue. I made one call. I called Nathan Briggs the next morning at 8 a.m. sharp. He'd been my lawyer for years, handled Virginia's estate, helped with a property dispute in 2015, drafted my will. Gerald, he said when I walked into his office at 9:30. What's going on? I told him everything. The truck, the movers, the conversations with Daniel and Michelle, the police, the $4,400 deposit. Nathan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. They tried to forcibly relocate you, he said finally. Yes. We need to subpoena their communications. If they plan this, there's a paper trail. He was right. Within a week, Nathan had emails, text messages, everything. The first email was from January 15th, Michelle to Daniel. Dad's getting worse. We need to act before he does something stupid with the house. Daniel's response, Maple Ridge is $2,200 a month. We can rent his house for $3,000. That's $800 month profit, plus 400 Ks. When he dies, $800 a month. We can't let him change the will, Michelle wrote. He won't push back, Daniel replied. He never does. There were spreadsheets, profit columns, even a tab labeled reverse mortgage. Then the forged lease. Nathan pulled out the lease. The signature at the bottom, supposedly mine, wasn't my handwriting. She forged your signature, Nathan said. The deposit was $4,400. It came from your bank account. How did she access my account? You gave Michelle your online banking password 2 years ago, after Virginia died. You asked her to help set up automatic payments. I remembered. She'd been helpful, patient, and she'd written down my password. We can prove the signature is forged, Nathan said. But this is more than fraud. This is elder abuse, financial exploitation. We need to file for a restraining order immediately. File it, I said. The restraining order hearing was 2 weeks later. I sat at a table with Nathan in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and floor polish, the kind of room where families destroy each other with legal paperwork. Across the aisle, Michelle and Daniel sat with their attorney, Roger Klein. He was in his 60s, expensive suit. The judge was a woman in her 50s named Sandra Oakes. She had tired eyes and a stack of case files on her desk. Klein went first. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and spoke with practiced sincerity. Your Honor, this is a tragic situation. My clients are concerned children trying to help an aging parent who's becoming a danger to himself. Mr. Carter is 72 years old. He lives alone. He's had several documented incidents of confusion. My clients were acting out of love. I felt my jaw tighten. Documented incidents. What incidents? Nathan stood up. Your Honor, may I present evidence? He submitted my medical records first. A full physical examination from 2 months ago. Blood pressure, normal. Cognitive screening test, perfect score. No sign of dementia. No memory impairment. Mr. Carter passed a comprehensive cognitive evaluation, Nathan said. His doctor has submitted a letter stating he is fully capable of living independently. Then, Nathan submitted the email. He read Daniel's message aloud, his voice calm and clear. Maple Ridge is $2,200 a month. If we move him there, we can rent his house for at least $3,000. That's $800 month profit right there. Plus, the house is worth at least $400K when he dies. The judge's expression changed. She leaned forward, reading the document more carefully. Nathan continued. These emails show a clear financial motive. The respondents weren't concerned about Mr. Carter's safety. They were concerned about securing his assets. He submitted the forged lease. Our handwriting analyst confirmed the signature wasn't Mr. Carter's, the unauthorized bank transfer. Judge Oakes read everything in silence. When she finished, she looked at Michelle and Daniel. These emails suggest you were planning to profit from relocating your father. You discussed rental income. You created financial projections. You signed a lease in his name and withdrew $4,400 from his account without authorization. Klein tried to interrupt. Your Honor, I'm not finished. You forged your father's signature. You accessed his bank account without permission. These are criminal acts. Michelle's face went pale. Judge Oakes set down the documents. The courtroom went quiet. I'm granting the restraining order, she said. Daniel and Michelle Carter are prohibited from accessing Mr. Carter's property, finances, or medical information. Violation will result in arrest. Daniel shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is insane. Sit down. The courtroom froze. I'd never heard a judge's voice cut like that. He sat. Furthermore, Judge Oakes said, her voice ice cold, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution, elder abuse, fraud, attempted theft. You forged your father's signature to steal his home while he slept. Michelle's face went white. Someone in the gallery gasped. This court is adjourned. Outside, Michelle was crying in the parking lot. Daniel was on his phone, his face red. People stared as they walked past. I didn't look back. 3 months passed. The restraining order kept them away. No calls, no visits, no texts asking how I was doing. The silence was strange. For 2 years after Virginia died, they'd called constantly, multiple times a week. Just checking in, Dad. Do you need anything? I'd thought they were being attentive, caring children worried about their widowed father. Now I understood. They'd been monitoring me, looking for signs of decline, documenting moments they could use to prove I was incompetent. Every forgotten name, every repeated story, they'd filed it away as evidence. In June, a letter arrived through Nathan's office. It was from Michelle. Dad, I know you're angry. I know you hate us, but I need you to know we weren't trying to hurt you. We were scared. We thought you were going to fall or forget to pay bills. And yes, we thought about the money. I won't lie about that. But it wasn't the main reason. We just wanted you to be safe. I'm sorry we went about it the wrong way. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't respond. In July, Daniel called Nathan's office. He wanted mediation. Family therapy, he called it. A chance to heal and rebuild our relationship. Nathan came to my house to ask what I wanted. No, I said. Are you sure? I'm sure. I wasn't interested in healing. I wasn't interested in rebuilding. I was interested in living my life without fear that my children would try to take it from me again. That same month, I updated my will. Nathan helped me draft it. The house would be sold after I died, and the proceeds would go to the public library, the same library where Virginia had volunteered for 20 years. They'd use the money to buy books, host reading programs. Daniel and Michelle would each receive $5,000, enough to acknowledge they were my children, not enough to make a fight worth it. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan asked. "Yes. They might contest the will." "I know. That's why you're going to include a no contest clause. If they challenge it, they get nothing." Nathan made a note. Done. I signed the document on August 3rd. Nathan's assistant witnessed it, along with a notary public. It was legal, binding, and final. I felt lighter than I had in months. Michelle showed up at my house on November 14th, a Thursday afternoon. She violated the restraining order. I was in the backyard, raking leaves. The oak tree we'd planted in 1985 had dropped its entire load in the past week. I heard the gate creak open and turned around. She was standing there holding a pie, apple, from the smell, my favorite. "Dad," she said, her voice cracked, "I just want to talk. Please." I didn't say anything. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and called Nathan. "She's at my house," I said. "Don't engage. I'm calling the police." I put the phone back in my pocket. Michelle was crying now, tears running down her face. The pie, still in her hands. "Dad, please, I miss you. We made a mistake. Can't you forgive us?" I walked toward the house. She followed. "Dad, I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything?" I stopped at the back door, turned to face her. "It used to," I said. Then I went inside and locked the door. Officer Ramirez arrived 10 minutes later, the same officer who'd helped me in March. He recognized Michelle immediately. Through the window, I watched him talk to her. She was still crying, gesturing, pleading. Ramirez was firm, professional. He handed her a citation. After she left, Ramirez knocked on my door. He was holding the pie. "Apple," he said. "Smells good." I threw it in the trash. In December, the district attorney's office contacted me. They'd reviewed the case, the forged lease, the emails, the financial projections, the unauthorized bank transfer. They were prepared to file criminal charges, elder abuse, fraud, and attempted exploitation of a vulnerable adult. "We'd like your cooperation," the prosecutor said. Her name was Linda Vasquez, mid-40s, sharp and direct. "But we won't proceed without your consent. These are your children." She paused. "And once we file, you can't take it back." I thought about that. Virginia's voice in my head. "Family is everything, Gerald. You only get one." But Virginia had never imagined this. She'd never imagined our children calculating rental income from our home. She'd never imagined them forging my signature, accessing my bank account, planning to move me out while I slept. "File the charges," I said. The case went to court in February. Daniel and Michelle both pleaded guilty to a lesser charge. Attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. They were sentenced to 2 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory restitution, $10,000 to be paid to me within 6 months. Michelle cried through the entire sentencing. Daniel stared straight ahead, his jaw tight, refusing to look at me. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. When the money arrived in May, I donated all of it to the library. I still live at 428 Elm Street, the same house Virginia and I bought in 1981, the same kitchen where we ate breakfast for 35 years. I still wake up at 6:09 a.m. I still make my own coffee. I still do the crossword puzzle at the kitchen table. Last month, I installed security cameras. Nathan suggested it. 2 on the front porch, 1 on the back gate, 1 in the driveway. I can check them from my phone. The smartphone Daniel had called me too old to use. People at the library ask if I've forgiven them. I don't answer. If this happened to you, would you forgive them? What I know is this. They saw me as a problem, as money, as someone too old, too confused, too weak to fight back. They were wrong. I woke up to a moving truck in my driveway. My children thought they could take my home. They couldn't even take my silence. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the evidence. I didn't fight back. I pressed charges. They didn't lose my house first. They lost my respect. They wanted my house. They lost their place in my life.